We do get Nvidia earnings next week.
No, it's going to be very, very important.
And this tactical trade from Morgan Stanley on TSM today is part of it.
Yeah, and there's 4 different notes today saying don't worry about the quarter. So that I don't like that. We, those who own it, like my Chapel Trust, we don't want any expectations, especially because Blackwell is just now shipping for some companies. That's the latest and greatest. And we do like David. There seemed a secret Atlanta warehouse for Musk, where he bought a lot of GPUs. I don't know if you're aware of the secret Atlanta. Got that one?
No, actually, I had not heard about that. I was only aware of Memphis and the 200,000 H100s and
the Atlanta data center.
Warehouse.
I'm reading Business Insider has sizable computing power.
Is that for
It's for X and XAI.
Is that for Tesla?
Jim Cramer highlighted the upcoming Nvidia earnings, emphasizing its significance for the AI trade and market sentiment. He discussed investor expectations, noting concerns around the rollout of Nvidia's Blackwell chips and recent challenges like the DeepSeek news. Despite these hurdles, Cramer mentioned optimism regarding AI-driven demand, with hyperscalers and other companies continuing to increase investments in Nvidia's GPUs, which are central to their long-term AI strategies. Cramer also touched on Elon Musk's significant investments in Nvidia chips, signaling the competitive landscape in AI advancements, particularly in large language models. He noted how the ongoing demand for AI-related technology underscores Nvidia's pivotal role, despite the stock's recent volatility. Expectations remain high for Nvidia, and its upcoming earnings report will provide crucial insights into demand trends, the impact of tariffs, and responses to previous setbacks. With the AI sector under scrutiny, Cramer remarked that Nvidia's performance and commentary could shape market perspectives on AI spending and innovation. The stakes are high, but the continued enthusiasm for AI suggests a favorable long-term outlook for the company.
Yeah, and
it is for XAI. Okay.
And, this is David. 12,000 GPUs they bought, $700 million worth of equipment. Again, another check, presumably for Jensen Huang. Remember when they had that split? That split's over.
Yep.
And then we get next week Nvidia. You sort of alluded to it, that company's going to report mid next week. There's always a lot riding on it, as we know. Given what happened with the DeepSeek sell-off, and even though Jensen Huang, the CEO, commented on it, albeit briefly in the last 24 hours or so, this is really going to be our first look under the hood of what they're actually thinking about demand. We know what the hyperscalers are spending, but we're going to get a better look on where the environment currently is.
Yeah, Scott, you said it. DeepSeek changed the game for Nvidia and for Nvidia shareholders. And I think that it might have actually done them a little bit of a favor in the sense that it gave them some cloud cover, right? So Jensen had been making comments about the rollout of Blackwell or the shift to Blackwell not exactly going as planned in previous quarters. And I think that maybe there's some of that sentiment, that gets a chance to get out there now under the cover of the DeepSeek news. And more than anything, it at least took away the conversation or the concern that investors had about aggressive valuation on that stock, right? We were talking about something like 40 times this year's earnings 2 quarters ago, and now the shares have sold off. They've recovered some since the DeepSeek announcement, but they haven't quite gotten back to where they were. And I think that might actually be a positive for Nvidia going into earnings next week instead of hurting it as badly as we probably thought it would 4 weeks ago.
What's your price prediction for Nvidia in the next 6 months? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Steph, what do you think?
Nvidia specifically, I think the expectations are still quite high, and the stock is up 100% in the past year, and everybody owns it, probably except me. But the expectations are high, and I don't know if they're going to raise numbers as aggressively as they did, and they have been doing over the past year. I don't think it's going to fall off a cliff. And you mentioned the hyperscalers. The hyperscalers aren't cutting back. They're increasing the numbers, right?
Up.
So that does help them. I just think the expectations are really high. So I think, wouldn't be surprised as the options market is pricing an 8% move either way. I don't think that's a really big deal, considering how much the stock has actually run up. But I would wait, in terms of buying other semiconductors, I would wait until they report.
How big of a moment is this for the market next week as it goes into a new week a bit unsettled?
Yeah, we think it is still a very important moment simply because it has such a large weight in the indices and it encapsulates the hope of all of the AI trade. And looking at the technicals of Nvidia, it's not all too inspiring in the very short term. If 125 doesn't hold, we do think you could see something closer to 100. That's very normal for Nvidia to experience that kind of volatility. But that kind of volatility is something that the market has not been used to over the last couple of years since we've been in this very powerful up and to the right, low volatility kind of trading.
The stock was just back at 145. Yeah. So in the momentum pullback and as tech had just started to reawaken, and now these stocks are selling off a bit, almost across the board. You can go down all of the Mag 7 names are certainly down today, and the only one that's positive on the week is Microsoft, and that's by this much.
Names like Nvidia keeping weekly losses to a minimum around 2.5% ahead of earnings Wednesday. Investors will be looking to CEO Jensen Huang for commentary on the supply of its latest chip, the impact of tariffs, and of course any fallout from last month's DeepSeek news. Hard to believe it was a month ago, Scott.
Yeah, I know it. Perfect setup for us. Seema, thanks so much. Seema Modi. Staying with Nvidia now, earnings obviously front and center next week. The latest checkup on the strength of the AI trade. For more on what to expect and what the current landscape actually looks like right now, let's bring in First Smart Capital founder and partner Rick Heisman. Welcome back.
Hey,
it's good to see you. So let's just think about Nvidia for a minute. I mean, in general, what do you think is on the line next week for the AI trade?
Well, it's really, are people continuing to spend on CapEx? And we're seeing not only the hyperscalers, but also companies in the private market continuing to bet big on the long term on AI and therefore continue to buy chips from Nvidia.
So we heard within the last 24 hours from Jensen Huang, CEO, who addressed the fallout from DeepSeek, suggesting that the market got it wrong, that all it shows you is that you're going to need way more compute, not less. Some of the other hyperscaler CEOs spoke of, similar needs following that really big upset that we witnessed in the market, and I'm sure you watched it as closely as everybody else. Is that how you see it too?
I don't see it exactly the same way.
Where's the nuance then?
I see that there are going to be open source and closed source data sets, and they're going to need different amounts of compute to be able to work together. But, all the big models are going to need a massive amount of compute. So maybe the hyperscalers will have some closed models, even OpenAI having closed models. But some of the open source models will be used by more of the startup ecosystem and people who need to be more capital efficient.
Did you come away from that story thinking that it was less bullish for an Nvidia, or at least even to some incremental degree? Did you come away thinking that?
A little bit, but not really, because what you're seeing is that there's still this fundamental demand from AI. The important thing is DeepSeek immediately rocketed to #1 on the App Store, which means there's still fundamental consumer demand for whatever AI products out there. And as much as you could track, fundamental demand equals demand for Nvidia chips, and therefore that demand will remain for the near term.
You mentioned the amount of money that the hyperscalers are spending. I mean, it's extraordinary, right? How long does the market accept that?
They have to accept it for the rest of 25, both on an offensive and defensive perspective. No one's going to announce on their earnings, we're going to spend less because we believe less in AI. That's not going to be a 25 story. It's, hey, we have to be offensive and defensive. We're at least halfway across this lake. We're beginning to see with things like Agentforce, the AI is working, it's driving ROI, and we need to continue to double down on this hand.
I don't know that there's a stock in the market that has higher expectations than Nvidia, which always does, and it's going to again next week, and maybe the stakes are higher given the way we're ending this one.
Well, that's true. They are higher, and everybody will be looking at Nvidia as sort of the harbinger of where AI is going. But we'll see. I mean, Elon Musk just spent quite a bit of money on thousands of Nvidia chips that he put together, and within a few weeks or maybe months, they put together a large language model, which is very competitive with the other ones. I think the fact that we've got everybody scrambling to build the next best large language model, and every week we seem to have another one, I think that's great progress in terms of what the users of this technology are going to be able to do with it. I think that's already happening. So yeah, I think Nvidia is very important. But so are 493 other stocks besides the Magnificent Seven, and I think they're going to continue to crank out better and better earnings.
We do have a few big points coming up next week. Nvidia is one of those, which you pointed out. I think this for them is going to be something where they need to shake off the DeepSeek news, right? They dropped like 17% the day that news came out. And so I think they need to show that that's not going to be a problem for them. They've already came out to say that they actually expect that there's going to be more computing power needed based off of what happened with DeepSeek. And you've seen the CapEx from all of these major firms have actually increased. Like I think $335 billion this year is earmarked to go towards AI spending. So I think they just need to prove that that demand is still there. They have a conference that's I think in March, and I think that's probably going to be more of a market-moving event than what we see next week. But markets are absolutely going to be watching that.
Yeah, there's just so much going on there, and it's so interesting that Nvidia is going to have to take a little bit of a defensive position potentially and spend some time on the call talking about that DeepSeek news.
Nvidia's upcoming earnings report is crucial for the AI market, with investors watching closely for updates on demand and the rollout of Blackwell chip. CEO Jensen Huang's insights will shed light on the company's position amidst growing capital expenditure on AI and recent market challenges like the DeepSeek news. With Elon Musk's GPU purchases and the race for advanced AI models, Nvidia remains central to innovation in the tech industry. Next week's results could provide key direction for the company and the AI sector. Can Nvidia meet or exceed expectations in its upcoming earnings report? How do you think Nvidia will shape the future of AI development?